August 5th, 2025. Well, the Democrats apparently are trying to prevent a redistricting in the state of Texas by fleeing the state. Um, and of course, this gets into the issue of the gerrymandering issue that's behind all this. Um, as it is, I guess that without a quorum, it's going to be impossible to actually have a vote, which I guess that they feel they're going to lose, and therefore by fleeing the state to various other places that have friendly Democrat governments for themselves, that they won't be extradited easily. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out as far as the legalities of it. I guess as it is, they can be fined up to $500 a day for being absent, and apparently the actual pay in that legislature is very low. So for some of them, the ones that aren't successful lawyers or business people, this may be a bit burdensome. And I don't know what the legalities would be if somebody wants to pay them. Would that be I think that's where the governor Abbott's charge of bribery may come from, which has been ridiculed with some Democrats on X. But I think that may be why that became a talking point, let's say. But anyhow, the main issue, I guess, is the whole issue of redistricting, because essentially, by picking the districts appropriately, you can create an outcome which, of course, doesn't represent the actual voting pattern of the state itself. In other words, you might have a state which has, let's say, 60% Republican, 40% Democrat, for instance. It might end up with much more than a 6-4 ratio in the legislature. Or, on the other hand, if it's the other way around, Democrat and Republican, you'd have the opposite, such as Massachusetts, which apparently is, at least in the general election, was at that level for the presidency, and yet it's 100% Democrat districts. And I think that the question, I guess, from a Republican point of view, is it wise to go ahead with this redistricting or not? And I think when we look at the facts, the answer is probably yes. And the reason for that is because the Democrats have probably already gerrymandered their districts about as good as they can. And so, I mean, they were trying to push it further in New York in the last apportionment, as I recall, and they ended up, their own court system in New York ruled it illegal. So that's kind of the way that situation would be. If you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, or also you can follow me on Rumble if you'd prefer. So, but it'd be good to follow me on one of these, because that way you'll get updates regularly if you don't just happen to see one of my postings on social media. So yeah, I think the thought occurred to me initially: is this a risk for the Republicans to do this? Because of course the Democrats are threatening to retaliate. But when you look at what they've done in states like California, for instance, already, can they really push it much further? I mean, and if they try to push it too much further, they might end up risking districts that otherwise would comfortably go Democrat and flip to Republican by a thin margin or something. So they have to be a little bit careful about that. The other issue, I think, on California, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that their constitution is more restrictive on this than for instance, say the Texas one is, and that they're supposed to do it like once every 10 years or something, where apparently Texas has some loophole. And I've heard that one of the Republican candidates for governor out there is threatening to go to court if they pursue it there, which would be really interesting if they lost in court there because of their own constitution, and Texas was able to pull it off in spite of all these people running away. And we'll see what actually ends up happening there. The other thought, if you could find an excuse to indict them for a felony, I guess maybe you could have the feds bring them back, huh? But realistically, that probably won't happen. And probably what will happen is that they'll be able to kill off this issue in this particular special assembly that they have, but they will probably have another one afterwards and eventually maybe wear them down. And if you can go after people who are financing them leaving the state, maybe they could be guilty of something potentially. Then maybe you could inhibit that. I don't know. But I guess it's a good idea. On the other hand, I still think that the odds of the Republicans holding the House in the next election is pretty small, just based on historic precedents. I mean, the only time in recent memory I can recall the incumbent party doing it was in 2002, and that was during the whole situation around 9/11 and the early war on terror, when it was still highly supported by the public, and certain antics that certain Democrats played that sort of backfired on them at the wrong moment, and it all ended up with the Republicans holding the House in 2002. But I can't think of another time where either the party in power, if the party in power did hold it, it certainly lost a lot of seats. Like, for instance, I guess in 1998, the Republicans held the House in spite of everything that happened then with the Clinton impeachment and everything, but they actually did lose some seats there. So, well, but the Democrats lost some seats, but they didn't lose as many as to turn it around. So, but I think that's. But nonetheless, we have to try our best. It's possible, maybe with all these annex of these socialists, like they're running in cities like New York, that maybe that will end up in a situation where they will be a backlash, perhaps. I don't know. Or maybe the situation now will just be different. I mean, after all, we've a lot of good things have come so far. On the other hand, there are some risks that are inherent in the tariff policies. Not so much what a lot of the Democrats were saying early on, but this is going to get the next stage of this may be very interesting. We're coming up on that, and we'll have to see what occurs. So certainly August the 8th is Friday is coming up, and that's when the 100% tariffs on certain countries are supposed to happen. And so far, it doesn't look like those countries are budging unless they have a last-minute change of heart. On the other hand, I guess there is a last-minute diplomatic move to Moscow, but I can't imagine them agreeing to the Ukrainian ceasefire demand at all. And the Ukrainians, in my opinion, well, let's not get into that too much, but they haven't been offering any concessions at all. So, and my position remains that the Congress is really forcing Trump into what he's doing more than it's really his own plan. Otherwise, we'd have to say, what with this thing about us just walking away? That seems to have gone away. And I think it's because Congress is prepared when they get back to vote something on a mandatory level, perhaps if Trump doesn't do something voluntarily on those particular tariffs. The other ones are still in negotiation, are basically about trade deals and things, except for the one in Brazil. Well, another topic that's kind of gotten a little bit of play, a lot less I haven't commented on yet, but is this significant? But it's kind of growing. It's still out there. I'm amazed. Is this whole Sydney Sweeny flap about the American Eagle jeans and their commercial, and all the left-wing folderol about it, which seems to be an ongoing escapade. Of course, the latest thing apparently is it's been revealed that she's a registered Republican in Florida, and now we have a video out of her going to a pistol range and a kind of a tactical training range where she's shooting at multiple steel targets, rapid fire, and hitting most of them. Very, very interesting. And she also was working on a classic Ford Mustang. I don't know if that was a Ford ad or what that was, but certainly it certainly gave Ford some notice. Ultimately, I have to say this has worked out pretty good for American Eagle, because apparently the stock just shot up about 22%. I was actually looking at it this morning to see, well, is there any chance of, and by the time I looked at it, it had already popped up and was too late. And I'm like, gee, I wish I had thought of this a couple of days ago, although it was falling at that time. So apparently the original ad release shot it up, and then it fell back, I guess, with all the criticism. And then when it turned around, I guess now it's gone positive, and apparently these jeans are selling out. I have never bought any of them, so I don't know much about them, but haven't been buying jeans too much lately. But just been going with the ones in my inventory, so to speak. But anyhow, those are from J.C. Penney, so Also have some Levi's too. So, but anyway, that's beside the point. Maybe I should try out this particular brand, except they're probably out of stock right now. Maybe maybe that's just the women's. Maybe the men's are still in stock. I don't know. But anyway, that's kind of interesting. She's turning into a rather interesting lady, and I have to admit that although I'm a big movie buff, I guess you'd say, I'll have to admit I can't recall her being in too many movies. Although I understand that she did have a small role in the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood from back in 2019, which was, I think, basically set against the background of the Manson murders and so forth. And she played a character named Snake in that one. I don't recall too much, but I mean, at any rate, but she's been in a bunch of things that I usually don't watch, apparently, TV shows and whatever. So anyway, but I think that's kind of an interesting development. The left has gone cuckoo over this, and with all this Nazi nonsense and everything else, as they typically do. So at any rate, we'll have to see how the situation in Texas plays out, the whole showdown over Russia. Oh, one last thing on the Russian thing. I did look at a podcast called NY Prepper, because he tends to like to track where significant military aircraft are flying using the transponders, and apparently the E-4B is otherwise known popularly as the Doomsday plane, or I guess it's a National Command Center plane or whatever that the president could use in the event of a nuclear crisis or war. Apparently flew to D.C. for a while, although there's one that came back and landed back at Offutt today. So maybe we're standing down from the crisis after all. I don't know. Anyway, that's all for this time. I'll be posting this on YouTube and Rumble as always, and the address of my social media accounts are listed below, in the description below, excuse me, and you can, of course, follow me most frequently on X. All for now.